The Great Overland Odyssey. The adventure began on a breezy morning in Lisbon, Portugal. 10-year-old Leo helped his father Vasco secure the final spare tire to the roof of their rugged, dust-caked SUV. They stood on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, knowing that from this moment on, they would only move east. 20,000 kilometers, Leo whispered, tracing the route on a paper map. Behind them, the 25 de Abril Bridge stretched across the Tagus River, a golden gateway to the longest road trip on Earth. The tires hummed as they sped through the rolling vineyards of Spain and into the heart of France. Leo sat in the back with his mother, Elena, watching the scenery transform from Mediterranean scrub to the lush green forests of Germany. They crossed borders that were once lines on a map, now just bridges over rivers and signs in different languages. Elena pointed out the window as they passed a fairy tale castle nestled in the Bavarian hills. "The world is much bigger than our backyard, Leo," she said with a smile. By the time they reached Poland, the air grew crisp. The road stretched onward into the vastness of Russia. In Moscow, the car looked like a tiny speck against the massive, colorful domes of St. Basil's Cathedral. Leo stood in the middle of Red Square, feeling the weight of history beneath his boots. The journey was no longer just a drive. It was a transition through time and culture. Every kilometer east brought cooler winds and wider horizons as they prepared for the long trek across the Siberian plains. The landscape flattened into the endless, golden steppes of Mongolia. There were no fences here, only the earth and the sky. Elena and Leo stepped out of the car to breathe in the wild, dusty air. In the distance, a group of wild horses galloped across the plains, their manes flowing like silk. They met nomadic families who lived in round jers, offering them warm tea and stories of the Great Khan. Leo realized that even in the most remote places on Earth, a smile was the only passport he needed. The road climbed steeply as they entered China. The SUV wound through mountain passes until they reached a section of the Great Wall that snaked over the ridges like a stone dragon. Leo and Vasco hiked up the ancient stairs, looking back at the winding road they had traveled. From up here, the world felt silent and ancient. "We've crossed half the world, Leo," Vasco said, his voice full of pride. Leo looked south, where the air felt thicker and the mountains turned a deep, misty blue. As they crossed into Laos, the dusty plains were replaced by a wall of green. The heat became a physical weight, smelling of damp earth and jasmine. The road followed the mighty Mekong River, where long-tailed boats zipped through the brown water. Leo and Elena stopped at a roadside stall where the jungle canopy hung low over the asphalt. They watched as the local children played near the water's edge. The dry, cold air of the north was a distant memory now, replaced by the vibrant pulse of the tropics. Thailand was a whirlwind of color and sound. In Bangkok, the car crawled through a sea of bright pink taxis and golden tuk-tuks. Leo wandered through a bustling night market, the air filled with the scent of sizzling spices and sweet mango. He tasted exotic fruits he couldn't name and listened to the melodic chatter of the vendors. The journey had taught him that the world wasn't just a place to see, but a place to taste, smell, and hear. He felt more alive than he ever had in the quiet streets of Lisbon. They headed south through the narrow peninsula of Malaysia. The road was flanked by towering palm oil plantations and ancient rainforests. In Kuala Lumpur, the car seemed to shrink beneath the gleaming steel and glass of the Petronas Twin Towers. Leo and Vasco stood at the base of the skyscrapers, looking up until their necks ached. "Almost there," Vasco said. The end of the road was finally in sight, but Leo found himself wishing the road would go on forever. Finally, they crossed the bridge into Singapore, the very tip of the continent. The journey that had begun at the Atlantic Ocean now ended at the Singapore Strait. Leo and Elena walked through the futuristic gardens by the bay, where giant super trees glowed with purple and blue lights. They had traveled through 11 countries and 2 continents without ever leaving the ground. They stood at the water's edge, watching the massive cargo ships wait to head out to sea, symbols of a world that was constantly moving. That night, Leo sat on the hood of the SUV, which was now covered in the dust of 3 different deserts and the mud of a dozen rivers. He opened his journal, which was filled with pressed flowers, ticket stubs, and sketches of the people he had met. He looked at the stars, realizing they were the same stars he saw in Lisbon, just viewed from a different side of the world. He wasn't the same boy who had left Portugal. He was now a traveler, a witness to the vast, beautiful, and connected puzzle of the earth.